The war in Europe was gasping its final breaths. Germany's cities were burning ruins, its soldiers scattered like ashes across the wind. Somewhere near the outskirts of a small Bavarian village, hidden between pine-covered hills and a river that had run red for months, a group of German women, former nurses, workers, and wives, were huddled inside a collapsed barn. They were prisoners of war now, though not by design, left behind, forgotten and starving. For days, they had survived on muddy water and thin air. Their uniforms, once gray and clean, were now stiff with dirt. One of them, Anna Weiss, clutched her younger sister Lissel close as the cold crept through the broken boards of the barn. The sound of distant artillery was faint, like thunder leaving the sky, but hunger, exhaustion, and fear still hung heavier than smoke. Anna looked at Lissel's trembling hands. "Hold on," she whispered, voice barely a breath. "It'll be over soon." Lissel nodded weakly, eyes half closed. For them, over didn't mean peace. It meant surrender, or worse. Rumors had reached even the forgotten rumors of soldiers who treated German women with cruelty, of vengeance unleashed for years of war. Every night they prayed, not for rescue, but for an ending that wasn't brutal. That morning, however, something changed. From beyond the trees came a distant rumble, not of shells, but of vengeance. The women froze. The sound grew louder, closer. "Americans," whispered one of the older women, fear slicing her voice. "They've come." Anna's heart raced. She reached for Lissel's hand and held it tightly. The barn doors groaned as a sudden gust of wind pushed through, carrying with it the scent of diesel and dust. Moments later, the door swung open. A figure stood there wearing a brown U.S. uniform and a steel helmet gleaming under the gray light. Behind him were three others, rifles lowered but ready. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The women cowered, expecting the worst. But the soldier, Corporal James Dalton, 26, from Ohio, didn't shout. He didn't raise his weapon. He looked around, eyes widening at the sight of the starved women, huddled like ghosts. "Jesus Christ," he muttered softly. Then, in a voice filled with disbelief, he said, "You're safe now." The women didn't respond. They didn't believe it. They had seen too much, lost too much. Dalton slowly stepped forward, removing his helmet. "No one's going to hurt you," he said again, kneeling beside Anna and offering a water canteen. His voice was trembling, not from fear, but pity. Anna stared at the metal container, uncertain if it was real. Slowly, she reached out and took it. The water was cold. It felt like life itself. As she drank, tears streaked down her cheeks, silent, shaking. Dalton looked at his men. "Get them food," he ordered quietly. "Right now." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in that broken barn. Within an hour, the Americans had built a small campfire outside. The soldiers handed out what they had: canned beans, army bread, bits of meat. It wasn't much, but to the women, it was a feast. Lissel ate, so quickly that Dalton gently took her hand. "Slow down, kid," he said, smiling softly. "You'll make yourself sick." Lissel looked up, confused, not understanding his words, but his tone was kind. She nodded timidly. The Americans watched them in silence, some ashamed, some simply stunned. These weren't the enemies they'd imagined. They were thin, barefoot, shaking, just people trying to survive the madness. Private Ellis, the youngest of the squad, leaned toward Dalton. "They're Germans, sir. Should we even be feeding them?" Dalton's eyes hardened. "We're feeding humans, Ellis, not flags." That night, as rain began to fall, Dalton sat by the fire, writing in his journal. "They look like they've seen hell," he wrote. "Maybe we all have." Anna approached him quietly, holding the canteen he'd given her. "Danke," she whispered, her voice raw. Dalton looked up and smiled. "You're welcome." Neither spoke for a moment. The fire crackled between them, and the rain hissed softly on the tin roofs of abandoned sheds. Behind them, his men shared cigarettes with the women. Awkward laughter breaking through language barriers. In that strange pocket of time, enemies were no longer enemies. Just survivors, but not everyone approved. The next morning, their commanding officer, Major Thompson, arrived with reinforcements. When he saw the scene, the women being cared for, sitting around the American camp, his face turned red. "What the hell is this?" he barked. Who authorized this? Dalton stood at attention. Sir, we found them starving. I couldn't just— You're not here to run a charity, Corporal. Thompson snapped. These are Germans. POWs. Dalton's jaw tightened. With respect, sir. They're human beings. The major glared at him for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. Get them processed and moved to the nearest internment camp by tomorrow. And no more playing savior. When he left, Dalton looked at Anna and Lissel, who stood silently nearby. Don't worry, he said softly. I'll make sure they treat you right. Anna nodded, though she wasn't sure what awaited them. The following day, trucks arrived to take the women to a camp in southern Germany. It wasn't a prison like they'd feared. It was a holding site for civilians, guarded but fair. Dalton and his men accompanied the convoy. Along the way, Anna looked out the window of the truck at the desolate countryside. Fields, once green, were burned black. Churches were roofless. Cows wandered without farmers. Dalton walked alongside the truck for a while, glancing up occasionally. She caught his eye once and smiled faintly, a fragile, fleeting smile that made something in him shift. When they reached the camp, the women were processed and given blankets. Lissel clung to Anna's arm as they were shown to their tents. That evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Dalton visited the camp one last time before being reassigned. He found Anna sitting near the wire fence, staring at the sky. Do you hate us? He asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment before replying, No, not anymore. Dalton exhaled, almost in relief. Then maybe, he said, this war really is ending. Anna smiled sadly. War ends, but people remember. Dalton nodded. He took something from his pukita, a small silver cross on a chain, and handed it to her. My mother's. She'd want you to have it. Anna hesitated, then accepted it. Danke. They said nothing else. The next morning, Dalton's unit moved out. When the guns finally fell silent, the silence itself was deafening. It was May 9th, 1945. The surrender had been signed. The radio crackled with words that few had ever thought they'd hear. The war in Europe is over. For Anna Weiss, standing in the middle of the camp yard, it didn't feel real. The sky looked the same. The air still smelled of smoke and dust. But somewhere deep inside, she felt the weight begin to lift, the weight of fear, loss, and endless waiting. Around her, other women wept softly. Some hugged, some stared blankly into space, their emotions too tangled to express. Lissel held Anna's arm tightly, whispering, It's really over. Anna nodded slowly. Yes, little one, it's over. At least this part. Life inside the camp began to change. The soldiers who once guarded them now brought fresh bread and news of rebuilding towns. The cruelty many had feared never came. Instead, there were gestures of kindness, small but genuine. Days turned into weeks. Anna often sat near the camp fence, watching the hills beyond. She thought of Corporal James Dalton, often his calm eyes, his trembling hands when he'd offered water, his quiet defiance when he stood up to his superior. In a world where so many had chosen hate, he had chosen mercy. One morning, a message came. The women will be released. The news spread through the camp like a spark of light. People began packing the little they had. When Anna and Lissel left the gates, a soldier handed them a slip of paper, pass for travel, home, and a small ration bag. As they walked down the dirt road, Anna reached into her coat pocket and felt the silver cross Dalton had given her. She held it for a moment, the metal warm from her touch. Do you think we'll see them again? Lissel asked. Anna smiled faintly. No. But that's all right. Some people you meet only once and they change you forever. The sisters' journey home took them across miles of broken villages and burned out trains. Everywhere they went, they saw the same sight: women rebuilding walls with bare hands, men returning from the front lines, children searching for food. The world was in ruins, yet there was movement again. A slow breath of life returning to the earth. When they reached what was left of their hometown, the houses stood like skeletons, but the church was still there, its steeple cracked, its bell silent. Inside, Anna lit a small candle and placed the cross at the altar. Thank you, she whispered, to God, to fate, maybe to the memory of a man who had shown her kindness when the world had forgotten what it meant. Outside, Lissel stood in the sunlight, smiling weakly. Anna joined her, slipping her arm around her sister's shoulder. As the wind passed through the valley, carrying the faint scent of spring, Anna closed her eyes. The war had taken everything, but it had not taken her humanity. And in her heart, Dalton's words still echoed softly. "You're safe now,